Hi, I'm Jake, and now I'll show you how I created this popular social media effect inside of Adobe After Effects. This tutorial is one of many detailed tutorials which are available on Skillshare or on Gumroad. It's great for beginners because I take my time to explain every step which I make to create each effect. This is why it's longer than videos which I usually post on my YouTube channel. If you like this free tutorial from Skillshare, which is also available on Gumroad, feel free to purchase a Skillshare subscription to get access to all my detailed tutorials. Or you can purchase one tutorial at a time on Gumroad. Links are in description to this video. And now, let's get started! Okay, so I'm using Adobe After Effects 2021, but you can use any version of Adobe After Effects, it will work fine. Also, as you can see, I'm using standard layout, so you can click here, so your layout should be similar to mine. If for some reason you cannot see some of the panels which you can see on my screen, you can always enable it from Window, for example, Character. Okay, so let's import our footage. You can go to File, Import, File, or just left mouse double click here in Project panel. This footage will be available in Resource tab to this class. So for our effect we need card raw footage. You can just download from Resource tab to this class and import to your project panel. So now we need to create new composition. We can just click here to create new composition, or on this icon here, or go to Composition, New Composition. But the best way to create new composition is just to drag your footage here on New Composition or on Timeline. It will take the same dimensions and properties of your video. So now it's important to shoot your footage properly. For this effect, it will be better if you will shoot your footage from tripod, so your camera should not move at all. Next thing which you want to remember is that your hand should be at the same place as your future pose. So if I'm gonna press Ctrl R on keyboard, we can take this ruler and set it here. So now we can see that hand is right here and future pose is just about here. So basically, the best way is when your hand will be at this line of the edge of your future pose, in which you are going to freeze. So as you can see, this future pose outline is about here. And if I'm gonna scroll through my footage on timeline, you can see that it matches with the hand. So while you're shooting your video, you need to remember where your hand was, and then just pretend like you are taking this cardboard of yourself and put it out of the screen and stay at the exact same pose, so you would be able to grab yourself on the loop. So as you can see, this is pretty much the whole video. So for this effect, it's crucial where your hand should be. You can even set a marker here. So as you can see, the girl watches at her feet because she knows she needs to stand right here. So her pose will match with the hand right here. And the most important thing here is to film yourself from tripod and make sure that your hand and your final pose will match at the same place. In the next video, I'm going to show you how we can cut out ourselves and move with our hand. See you in the next video. Okay, so now we have this clean plate. We are walking into the frame, taking ourselves out, and standing right here. So first thing which we want to do is to duplicate this layer. So let's select it and press Ctrl D to duplicate. And make sure that your time cursor, this one, is set to a very last frame where you froze. And then you just want to right mouse click on this layer and go to Time, Freeze Frame. It will allow us to make a freeze frame from this video. So basically an image. As you can see, I'm scrolling and nothing changes. So now we can just basically cut out ourselves. Just make sure that you've selected this layer here and select this pen tool. With this pen tool, we can just cut out ourselves. And also make sure to save your project because After Effects can crash from time to time. So go to File and Save. And save to wherever location you want to save it on your computer. Let's click Save. Now make sure to select your footage, which we froze. We can even press Enter or Return to rename it. Let's call it Freeze. And also press Enter and then select this layer, select this pen tool, and using scroll on the mouse, you can zoom in or zoom out in your picture. We can also switch off this ruler because we don't want it. So let's click here to view, show rulers, and disable it. And also on your keyboard you can press a tilde key. This is this one. It's usually right below the escape button, which allows us to move your cursor on top of any panel and open it in full screen, as you can see. So let's use it. Just move your cursor on top of this screen and press this tilde key. It will show us in full screen. It's not necessary, but it makes navigation in Adobe After Effects a lot easier. So then you can just scroll with the wheel on the mouse to zoom in or zoom out. And also you can use this hand tool to move around your image. But simpler way is to just hold spacebar, and as you can see your cursor changes to this hand tool. And with the left mouse click and drag, you can just move around your image, just like this. Or basically just switch to this tool and move around, and then back to pen tool. So let's click on our footage to create first dot, and then you can click here to continue with this mask, and left mouse click and hold. In this way you can create this kind of Bezier curve. Once again, zoom in, and using spacebar, as you can see I'm holding spacebar, navigate our image, and just simply create another dot, and your goal is to cut out yourself like a cardboard. I'm gonna do this a bit faster, so I would not spend too much time of this class on this part, but you can spend as much time as you want to cut yourself properly. Here at legs, I would recommend to take a bit of the shadows. It will help to look a bit better in the future, so make sure to take a bit of shadow around your feet and just continue cutting yourself out from your video. By the way, you can zoom in as much as you want if you want to get a clean cutout. And finally, when you completed your mask, you need to close it at the point which you started. As you can see on my cursor, it has a little circle. It means that I'm going to close my mask. So let's click here. And now we finished our cutout. I'm gonna press tilde key to exit this full screen mode. And then we can just select this selection tool. Now, if we are going to select our freeze layer, we can just move around. And as you can see, we have this kind of cutout, which is perfect for us. And it's a good idea to press F on keyboard and change this feather, because if I'm gonna deselect this layer, you'll see that we have pretty rough edge here, and to smooth it out, we can just change it to like 3, and it will feather the edge. You can play around with this value, but it's good to keep it low, because here at the skin, you don't really want to have a big value, because as you can see, it will fade out. So let's keep it 2 or 3. I'm gonna set it to 3, and we have now clean cutout. So our next step will be to match this position of our cardboard to our hand. So let's find the moment where our hand is touching ourselves. Like here, just press P on keyboard to see the position of this freeze layer and create a keyframe. So what is keyframe? Keyframe is basically a point in time which remembers the value of certain property. In our case, this keyframe remembers this value of the property position. So for example, if I'm gonna move this time cursor and change this value, you can see that it's created a new keyframe of the same position property. And now After Effects will connect these two values. Basically, I've moved it to the left, so if I'm gonna scroll it, it moves to original position, and then to the left as I moved. So this is basically the principle of animation. Let's delete this keyframe because we don't want it. Basically, we want to match the movement of our cutout with the hand. And it's a good idea to use this pen behind tool, which allows us to move this anchor point. We can change this anchor point to the place of the hand. Why is that important? Because if I'm gonna press R on keyboard and we'll try to rotate this image like this, you can see that it rotates around this anchor point. So if it would be here, it would rotate from this point. And in our case, we would want to rotate our cardboard, and we want to have it around our hand. So it would look like she's holding it right here. Also, we can switch this layer to a 3D layer by clicking here. It will allow us to rotate it in 3D, like this. In our case, we will have this little tilt. So we would have this feeling of 3D dimension. But first of all, let's animate our position. So select this layer, press P on keyboard to see the position. We can see our position keyframe, and we can change to selection tool. Then we can just skip a few frames. We can also press Ctrl-Shift-H. It will remove all of these outlines, and now we can see ourselves a lot better. And basically we want to remember this point around our armpit and this part of the finger. It's important to remember where it was attached, because by skipping a few frames like this, we can basically select this layer and use arrow keys on keyboard, and holding Shift, we can move our image just like this. And now we can just remember that at this moment in time, we could see this part of the finger and it around our armpit. So we can just skip a few frames and make sure that we still see this part of the finger and it should align with our armpit. Then skip a few frames, also change the position a bit, and you can just move around to see if it looks like it tracked to our hand. Skip a few frames, move it a bit, align your armpit to your finger. Then once again, let's see if it looks right, and skip a few frames, align it, and check if it looks right. As you can see at this moment, it moves a bit faster than our hand, so we can just skip a few frames and move it back like this, so it would look like it's stuck to our hand. And the more time you will spend on this, the better track you'll get. And just make sure that you are aligning some point of yourself with the fingers which you have here. I'm gonna match it a bit roughly, but you can spend more time, so it would look a lot better. And basically we are moving until it goes out of the screen, just like this. So now, if I'm going to see this part, you can see that we have this position tracking, which is pretty good. And then we want to have rotation. So at this moment we can press Shift and hold on keyboard and press R on keyboard, as you can see. It will allow us to see the position and rotation at the same time. If you clicked here and turned your layer to 3D layer, you'll see this XYZ dimension of rotation, which will allow us to rotate it in 3D. So I want to add a bit of rotation in X-axis, like this. So here at the beginning, it will stay at 0. Let's create a keyframe. And here I asked the girl to tilt the hand, like this. If you'll pay attention to this hand, you'll see that she twisted it a bit. And now we can match it and rotate it in X rotation, like this. So now as you can see, we have this kind of animation. We can also select this keyframe and press F9, which means that this motion will start fast and slower till this keyframe. It will give this more natural look and slow it down, so it will match better with our hand. Same thing we want to do with this keyframe. Select it and press F9. And if we will click here to go to graph editor, you will see this kind of graph, which means that this motion starts slow, then fast, and then slow again. And as you can see, it matches with our hand a lot better. So now we have this cool rotation in 3D, so it would look more like a cardboard. We can control how much we want to rotate. Maybe something like -25 will be optimal, but you can pretty much rotate to any degree you want. And next thing which you want to do is to rotate in Z rotation. Because now, if you'll see, it looks pretty good, but it still doesn't look natural. And to add a bit more of weight to this cardboard, we can just create a keyframe to Z rotation, just before we are going to move to the left. So we've created this keyframe here, and towards the end, we can just rotate it a bit like this. And now if we are going to take this keyframe and press F9, so this motion will start a bit slower at the start and then faster here. And maybe let's rotate even more, like -20 or -15. You'll see like we have some kind of inertia. We can even delete this keyframe of position and move it a bit more so it will go out of the frame. And now as you can see, we have this kind of feel, like this cardboard has some weight. We can even select this keyframe and go to Graph Editor and make it a bit even slower at the start and faster at the end. So this motion would look a bit more natural. Let's go out from this Graph Editor and press 0 on numpad to see the preview. Okay, so basically we have this main idea done, but if you're going to see our final result, you can see that we have this changing of light, which we want to add, so it will sell more like this is 3D cardboard. And also you can see that we have flawless transition. In our case, if we will preview, you can see that we don't have any changes in light. And here at the end, it will kind of jump. If I'm gonna press Shift F5, we will take this screenshot and let's compare with this first frame. And you can see that it has a lot more shadow here. So these minor issues we are going to fix in next video. So this effect would look flawless. See you in the next video. Okay, so now let's fix this issue with this shadow. The easiest way to fix this issue is basically to take this background footage. We can even call it BG. Just press Enter on keyboard and call it BG. Then press Ctrl D to duplicate it, place it above and move it to the left. So we would have only this last frame. Basically the same thing which we did with this freeze frame. And then right mouse click, press freeze frame. And now we can just extend it, this layer, just about 20 frames and press T on keyboard. This allows us to see our opacity. We can click here to create a keyframe and over time we can set this opacity to 0. And this will create this kind of fading animation. And if we will press 0 on numpad, you'll see that we don't have anymore any jumping lighting in our shot. So here you can see that it has this smooth transition. So pay attention about here. It has this really smooth transition and it looks much more professional. And last thing which we want to add is the changing in the lighting. So this is also pretty easy to do. You can just go to Layer, New, Light. We will use two lights. One would be point light. Let's click OK. We added this kind of light somewhere around here. If we will press Ctrl-Shift-H, we will see this light and we can even move around, which looks pretty cool, but it doesn't really fit with our image. So this is why we want to use another light. Go to Layer, New, Light, and let's add Ambient Light. Basically this ambient light, let's click OK, will preserve original colors. So if I'm gonna shut this off, this point light, you'll see that we have these original colors which we had before. But with this point light, we can add additional light to our video. So let's set this light around our light source. In my case, it's right here. But in your case, it could be at any other place in your image. So make sure to place this light wherever you had light in your scene. Then you want to press P on keyboard to see the position and move it a bit farther than our cells. So it will affect only at the point of rotation, like here. As you can see, when we rotate it, it introduces our light. So with this Z position, we can control where this light will appear. So let's try at 0. And as you can see, at 0, it will introduce right with our rotation, which is perfect for us. And you can play around with these values to see where you want to introduce your light. So as you can see, I've purposely moved my light to this light source. So it would look like we are catching light from this light source on top of our cardboard. And now as you can see, it looks pretty good, but we can also press T on keyboard and reduce the amount of light which we are introducing. So let's set it to 55, so it would be not so noticeable. And now it looks much more believable. If for some reason you can see that your image got too saturated, you can just simply, here at the beginning of rotation, select your freeze layer and go to Effects and Presets, wait it for load up, and apply this tint effect. Just right here, tint, and left mouse click and drag on top of this freeze frame layer and set this amount to 0. Then we want to create a keyframe, and a bit later, here where we got our footage a bit too saturated, we can set it to 15. So as you can see, now colors matches our colors better. And you can play around with this amount to get exactly the same colors. In my case, something like 9 works best. It doesn't get too saturated. And it also looks a bit more professional. And last thing which you want to add is to select this freeze frame and apply some drop shadow effect. So type here in Effects and Presets panel, drop shadow, left mouse click, and drop it on this freeze frame. And now if we will move this distance, you'll see this shadow. With this direction, we can change the direction of our shadow. And also we want to change the softness. Let's set it to high value, and maybe let's change this opacity to like 25. So it would be subtle, but we will still have some kind of shadow from our cardboard. It also will add a little something to make this effect more believable. And you can play around with this opacity to make sure that this shadow is not too visible. And let's press 0 on numpad to see our result. And last thing which we need to do is to create a matte, so our finger will go on top of our cardboard. So let's do exactly this. For this we need to take our original footage, which is BG, and press Ctrl D to duplicate it. Set it above, use Rada Brush tool. So to use Rada Brush tool, we need to select our layer, we can call it finger, and just press Enter on keyboard and type finger. Then let's enable this layer, and also let's choose this Rada Brush tool. Then you need to left mouse double click on this finger layer to open in layer mode, and here we can use our Rada Brush tool. We can zoom in or zoom out using wheel on the mouse. Also, you can press spacebar on keyboard, and it will allow us to use this hand tool, and with the left mouse click and drag, you can move around your image. If you hold Ctrl and left mouse click and drag to the left or to the right, you can change the brush size. And if you release Ctrl, now you can paint over our footage, just like this. In our case, we want to track only our finger. So with this green brush, we want to tell to the software, Adobe After Effects, that we want to keep something in, that this part we want to track. If you hold Alt key on keyboard, it turns to red. So it means that when we are brushing up our footage, we're deleting unwanted areas. And in our case, we want just to keep our finger and not entire hand. So make sure to select something like this, and then just keep frame by frame and make sure that it stays on your finger. If it doesn't stay, you just need to cut out unwanted parts, like here, and add our finger if we delete it accidentally. So in our case, we just want to have this finger tracked. Then skip few frames and just make sure that your tracking goes well. If tracking is trying to get this part of the hand, it's not a problem. Just make sure that this part which will go on top of our cardboard is tracked properly. So it only will stay on your finger. So for example, here you can see that it loses track. You just need to cut out, tell to the software that you want to keep only this part, and then just simply continue this process. So in my case, I don't want to waste any time of this class, and I'm gonna cut out only this part of the footage, but you can basically cut out your finger throughout all of this video. Then once you'll get your cut out finger up till the end of the video, we'll need to press this freeze button. It will freeze all the process which we got. So let's click here. As you can see, it saves our progress. And after this, you can just simply go to composition and see how it stays exactly on top of our footage. And here we have a bunch of settings which we can use. Basically, we can use this feather. We can add some feather so it will smooth the edge. We can lower contrast so it will smooth the edge even more. We can also shift the edge, make sure that it only covers our finger. Something like this. And this is basically how we can add a finger on top of our cardboard, so it would look even better. And final thing which you can see, we have some lighting jiggle. We can fix this just by taking this freeze cardboard layer and press Ctrl D to duplicate it. Let's place it on top and let's call it finger shadow, because we want to use the shadow only on top of our finger. And just basically change this drop shadow to shadow only. In this case, we will get only the shadow from our cardboard, and then we will use this finger, let's call it shadow, and then use this finger as a matte. So let's press Ctrl D to duplicate it, place it on top, take this shadow, and click here on toggle switches and modes. Here we can change the track matte. So let's change it to alpha matte. And as you can see, now we have basically uniformed and completely same lighting on our finger as it was. So with this little fix, we can get rid of this unusual lighting and get this professional looking footage which looks seamless. Feel free to follow me here on Skillshare. I post classes every week. I have a lot of classes on VFX using Adobe After Effects, as also I'm creating classes on motion design, text animation, basics of animation. From time to time I'm posting more complex classes of creating sparks and 3D animation, and also logo animation. I recommend you to watch this 12 minutes class if you want to try some VFX stuff like this one. Don't hesitate to create projects after watching my classes. I always check your work and give you some comments if you need help. Also, feel free to ask questions below any of my classes, and you can also suggest what you want to learn next. So once again, feel free to follow me here on Skillshare, and I'll be happy to see you in my next class. Thank you for watching.